organisers, and I think actually this session does flow on very neatly from the last discussion, because it is partly, it has a bearing on the whole question about alternatives to austerity, because, I mean, clearly, I guess we'll agree that one of the most shameful things about the dishonest and devastating project of austerity is that it's taken place exactly at the same time as the British establishment has become addicted to foreign interventions in various different parts of the globe, but also a massive amount of spending on the military, on subsidising the arms trade, and continuing to develop weapons of mass destruction to pursue those foreign wars. And it's important that we recognise that. I mean, this is a kind of glib point in one sense, but it's not just a rhetorical point. It's not just a propaganda point to make. That actually, if British foreign policy were to change, if there was a real U-turn in the kind of foreign policy that we're adopting, it would be possible to transfer the kind of resources that would make the current project of cuts and austerity unnecessary completely. The figures, I mean, some of the speakers have already outlined some of them, but they're quite incredible, really. I mean, the bedroom tax would save, apparently, is going to save the same amount of money as stopping the occupation of Afghanistan for just 40 days. The cuts to the NHS, 20 billion are tabled up until 2015. That represents just half the military budget in Britain for 1 year. So you can see how, you know, you really could transform the possibilities and the outlook for the kind of society we live in if we tackled the whole question of our addiction, or the ruling classes' addiction to war. And in fact, it's also possible to say, if you look at it more globally, in terms of the Western powers, if you look at the amount of money that's been spent in Iraq and Afghanistan by the US, Britain and the other Western powers, that the whole economic crisis itself could well have been averted if the kind of investment into arms and the waste that is spent on the military was actually placed elsewhere. So this is a question that is, as I say, not just something that, you know, a point that leftists make, but actually the whole question of the commitment of the Western powers to these foreign interventions, to the new imperialism, is a crucial structural element of the world that we live in today. And just to say a few words about Britain and Britain's policy at the moment, because I think this is a question that comes up and puzzles people. You know, why is Britain so committed to the special relationship, so committed to these foreign wars? I think it's not just something that successive governments have stumbled into. You know, it's not just a sort of trend that was started by Blair and has been kind of casually picked up by the current government. It's actually a central part of what passes for a kind of policy, a strategy for the world in the kind of twilight existence of the British establishment. Clearly, you know, as well, by the way, it's an important part of the argument about inevitability. And it's worth saying this over and over again, and this is the kind of the way in which this debate references to the previous one. I mean, you know, the idea that austerity is inevitable, or that austerity is essential, that is necessary, is completely vitiated by these kind of figures and this kind of analysis. But the reason why I think that Britain continues to pursue these policies, first and foremost, is because they, right across the political spectrum, British politicians are completely committed to what they call the special relationship, which is really a kind of serial humiliation. And this bizarre commitment to the special relationship was on display just in the last few days, when it transpires that most of the European governments have actually been spied on and have had their phones tapped by the NSA, by the American special services. It was big news that Merkel and Hollande actually complained about this. Cameron, whose phone it appears has been tapped by the US, he didn't complain. It seems like the line the British are taking is that, well, it wasn't so much that Cameron's phone was being tapped, it was the person on the other end of the phone that they were trying to monitor. And this is the kind of craven response we're getting from our people. But essentially, the the British ruling class is committed to, I think there's two planks to their austerity era politics. The first is a complete obsession with the financial services, and the second is a continued commitment to militarism and to an aggressive foreign policy. These are the two things the British establishment believes they do kind of reasonably well, and these are the two things around which they want to continue to hang their whole policy project. Basically, banks and tanks is the heart of it. So welcome to their world, really. And just to finish, I mean, that's the kind of rather sinister situation that we face. I think, though, to look on the bright side, one of the most positive things about kind of popular politics over the last 10 or 12 years has been the extent to which the British population has decisively rejected this approach. That time after time now, opinion polls show that the overwhelming majority of people reject foreign interventions, reject this level of military spending, don't believe it should happen, and not just for economic reasons, actually, because if you look at the polls in detail, what they show is that people believe that Britain should have rejected its colonial project many decades ago, that really this isn't the kind of operation that we should be pursuing around the globe. So that's the positive thing, and I think what's crucial for the movement generally is that we continue our opposition to the kind of desperately dangerous foreign policy British governments have been pursuing. We had a fantastic success over Syria. Mass protests, public opinion actually did defeat the government on a central project of its policy, and that's important in general terms. It's important because these wars are devastating, they cause misery and mayhem and destruction around the globe. It's important as well that this issue remains central to the movement for strategic reasons, because it's one of the ways that we can, by continuing to focus on the foreign wars, that we can actually continue to defeat the government, confront them on one of their weakest points, we can defeat the government, and actually it's one of the ways we can move forward to break the backward-looking and bankrupt British establishment. Thank you.